Good afternoon. This is Dyke Hendrickson, and this is the podcast Life Along the Merrimack. We meet every week and we talk about the health and history of the Merrimack River. Today I have a guest, Jack Santos, who is the chair of the Custom House Maritime Museum. Jack, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dyke. I really appreciate it.
So the Custom House Maritime Museum, as most of us know, is on the waterfront. They do, a lot of activities. They have First Friday. They have a lot of historical demonstration, historical sets there. And Jack, just briefly, I wonder if you could talk about the show that's there now at the Maritime Museum. It's really quite impressive. It's historical. And maybe you can just talk a bit about what's at the Maritime Museum now.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. As you know, the Maritime Museum, which is started back in the 70s, so we're coming up like on our 50th anniversary in a couple of years. It was around redevelopment, and it's been focused on Newburyport's maritime history. We're here to celebrate Newburyport's maritime history, and we're pretty excited about all the different artifacts that we have that have been, brought down to us from Newburyport captains in the 17th and 18th century. The official name of the Maritime Museum is the Newburyport Maritime Society. And we feel like we're the successor to the Newburyport Marine Society that was started in 1772 and disbanded in 1915. Our current exhibit, in keeping with that, is called Legendary Newburyporters. We keep one room. We've got 8 rooms of exhibits. One room is dedicated to a rotating exhibit that we rotate every 18 to 24 months. Currently, that room has our legendary Newburyporters, and it's a group of statues that was created, sculptures that was created by a legendary local artist, Jeffrey Briggs. And each of the sculpture is a famous Newburyporter or group of Newburyporters that had an impact on not only the city, but really the world. So,
he's done a wonderful job with that. I don't have to tell you that, but I've been there and it really is remarkable. His artwork is terrific. The history of each individual or each, small group or family is really remarkable. So how long is that going to be up, Jack? That's an exciting exhibit, I've got to say.
Till about the end of next year, the end of 2023 is the scheduled date. Who knows? It could go longer. It's been just so successful. And I'm hoping next year that we have some additional excitement by creating maybe 1 or 2 more sculptures, have Jeffrey actually do them on the lawn so people can stop by and see the process. So, but that's kind of all still in the works. We're looking for a sponsor to help make that happen for anybody who's listening.
Now, are you in the queue, Jack? Are you about to have your sculpture be putting out there at this point?
Oh my gosh, heavens no. I don't even rate according to some of these Newburyporters.
Some of them, like Caleb Cushing, some people, well, they won't remember him, but he was the first mayor of Newburyport in about 1851. Anna Jakes, I think we know that name. But over and over, I mean, if you know a little bit about Newburyport, it really is remarkable to see them. And of course, with their sculptures, which are very well done.
And Jeffrey did a great job to the detail. Like Anna Jakes, he really focused on her dress at the time, the end of the 1800s or 1900s. A lot of lace work. He did his homework to figure that out. The other thing I want to point out, there's a book on the exhibit. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes, that looks good. Yes.
So yeah, there we go. It was put together by Skip and Marge Motes. This has been a community effort. And we're talking about close to 100 people that were involved in pulling it together, whether it was through the selection of the sculptures, who gets honored with the sculpture, or a write-up of their lives, or the write-up for the book, because it goes into much more detail on the individual people. If you go up to the exhibit, there's a whole wall with all the names of everyone that was involved. And it really was, not just a 1 or 2 man show, it's a community show. So we're really excited about that.
Well, Skip and Marge Moats, as some listeners might know, of course, they're residents of Newburyport. I mean, they're real, into the weeds type of historians. They do great stuff. They could get the MVP awards for most time in the archives, which are downstairs at the public library. Marge and Skip Moats have done a terrific job with local history here.
They have. I mean, they're the go-to people in terms of historical trivia here in Newburyport.
Oh, absolutely. It makes me think about the summer, Jack. And do you have some things coming up in the summer, either outdoors, or do you have anything linked up around Yankee homecoming?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well, there's a few things. There's things associated with the museum that we're doing this summer. We're having a music series that will be in the month of August, about once a week. We'll have a musical band on the lawn. The lawn is really a gem in
Absolutely.
The Custom House lawn. And we really try to take advantage of it. Of course, we have weddings and celebrations, private weddings and celebrations. But when those get scheduled, we also try to kind of piggyback on that tent and schedule things to happen on the lawn that are more community oriented. It's like
as long as the tent is up, in other words.
As long as the tent is up, so that rain doesn't matter, and
right.
It doesn't really impact the event. Like recently, we had the favorite poetry project that Deb Zabel does, and there was a bar mitzvah that weekend on Saturday. On Sunday, we used it for the favorite poem project. And that was just a tremendous event. The mayor and a lot of counselors and a lot of local folks read their favorite poems. And then later that evening, we took full advantage of the tent. We had a special Ukraine fundraiser, was a Ukraine food tasting effort. And all the proceeds from that went towards the helping folks out in Ukraine that are just suffering from all the war and trauma that's happening over there.
Absolutely. And about, some weeks ago, you had a wonderful lecture on the river itself by John McCone, who is an official of the Merrimack Valley Watershed Council.
Exactly.
And, that drew a large audience and was, very informative. And, it's just a wonderful moment to have John
this
McCone.
Friday, if you're a member, and I'm sure you are, Dyke, but I'm sure a lot of people that are, watching or listening may not be. There's a special, you can be a member of the Custom House Maritime Museum. As a Newburyport resident, you get free admission, but that's not the only reason to be a member. You also get invited to our First Friday events, and the first Friday of July is this Friday. Lee Woodworth will be there to speak about her new book, the Tiptoe Through the Tombstones Volume 2. So that's going to be an exciting event. We have First Friday events planned for every first Friday of the month. I'll just give you a little bit of a headline about what's happening in the fall. We have actually gotten the new female commander of the USS Constitution to commit to coming up. And she's
terrific.
Talk up at the Custom House.
That's a great get, as they say in show business.
yeah. So we're really excited about that. But there's a lot happening at the museum for sure.
You've talked about some of those things. But one element that's interesting about you as the new chair is you're interested in research yourself. And I wonder if you could talk a little about the research you're doing. I know you go to Maine from time to time, and maybe you can talk a little about what things you're looking into.
Yeah. In fact, this is what I'm working on right now. Most of what I've done has been related to the people that have lived in my house, and mainly one character, Abraham Wheelwright, who was crossed the Delaware with Washington, fought in the Revolution, was a privateer for most of the Revolutionary War. But the research that I'm doing at the moment, which I'm going to speak about during Yankee Homecoming as part of the Heritage Tours events that Glee puts on. I'll be speaking at the library on the Monday of Yankee Homecoming at 7:00 in the library exhibit room. Whatever lecture room.
Right.
And it's not about Abraham. It is about Newburyport, specifically about Watts, Great Watt and Watts's cellar. For those of you that may not be familiar with it, there is a kind of a local legend. Some guy named great Watt who had a cellar, whatever that means, and was here even before some of the first European settlers that migrated down from Salem and Ipswich settled here, long before they settled here. And it's not a well-known story. It's not well documented. Skip and Marge Moats have done a lot of research about the potential location of the cellar. That hasn't been published yet. So I asked their permission to take what they've done so far and then dug into the history of Watts' cellar and who Great Watt was. And it's an amazing, fascinating story. And as you know, what I like to do with what I do to research is actually hands-on, go to the sites, see where, what happened, when, and where. I did that with Benedict Arnold and following his.
Yeah, I think that was part of the Kenneth Roberts book, the Arundel book, which, the Benedict Arnold, as you know, started here in Newburyport and went up to the Kennebec River.
Exactly.
That was, it almost put me off of canoeing because those guys said it was getting to be winter, it was cold. We won't go into that, but, Benedict Arnold was here and you looked into that yourself up in Maine.
We took the kayaks and we followed the trail as much as we could. And so in the spirit of that, we tried to follow where Watt, and his name, without giving too much away in the talk, his name was Walter Bagnall. And he lived here from about 16, he lived in the area. He came over to, what was then, early North America, around 1630 to 1640. Actually, 1620 to 1630. I got the dates wrong. I'm off by a decade. Because Newbury wasn't settled until 1635.
Yes.
So it was before the settlement of Newbury that he was hanging around this area as a fisherman primarily and a trader. In one of the known places that was established where he lived was an island off of Cape Elizabeth called Richmond Island.
Uh-huh.
So a part of my research is we grabbed the kayaks, we took the car up there, and we kayaked a mile offshore to Richmond Island and took a look around to see if there's.
It must have been fun.
Oh, I mean,
not getting into the weeds, but a different metaphor, getting into the seaweed of local history. And that must have been fun. I mean, I know the area. We lived in Maine for about 15 or 20 years. So that must have been fun kayaking and in historical pursuits.
Yeah, and we've got pictures. We'll talk about it during the talk and how it relates. The name of the talk is Bacchanalia, Murder, and the Newburyport Waterfront. So that gives you a taste of what Walt Bagnall was all about.
Well, that does sound good. I'm Dyke Hendrickson. This is the podcast Life Along the Merrimack. We're on 96.3 FM Joppa Radio, local Channel 9 cable TV, and we're archived on YouTube. I'm with Jack Santos, who is the chair of the Merrimack, of the Custom House Maritime Museum, and we're talking about some of his research. Another piece of research that you like, Jack, and you started it several years ago, is if this house could talk. And I know that you're interested in your own house, but many people have become interested in their houses. Can you talk a little about that? And will that be going on this summer?
We're doing it again, year 7. If somebody had told me when I kicked it off the first year that we'd still be doing this for another, 7 years, I would have said, you're out of your mind. But it's happening. And there's still a lot of interest. There's always new people that move into town that want to do a little bit of research on their home. And then there's always established people that find out more. They keep exploring, they find another story and they put it up. And I like to say every year there's a little bit of an innovation about what we do with If This House Could Talk. This year, our technology innovation is, I have it right here.
Oh, good.
I'll tell you what, we have, I think part of the problem here is I got my background blurred because I didn't want people to see how messy my office was. But we now have a way of creating vinyl posters.
Oh, that looks good, Jack. That looks terrific.
Yeah, it's since we've been doing it for 7 years, people have been using the same old poster over and over. It's
Right.
paper or
Yeah.
poster board. Now, if it's vinyl, you can easily reuse it. You can see at my house that this one man, Abraham Wheelwright, lived here or owned it for 61 years, up until 1850. And it's a story of him and his grandson, who became Episcopal Bishop of the United States, and his son, who was lost at sea off the coast of Virginia in 1830. Yeah,
Oh.
so it's an amazing story, and we got it on a vinyl poster. So
Well, that poster looks terrific.
we're hoping more people, will take advantage of. It's a fairly cheap and new technology. This poster cost me $15.
Well, that's certainly worth it. And, as you mentioned, I walk around, just about every summer, and some people have very good presentations of their house, and others, as you say, it looks like they not only put it up a couple of years ago, but they left it on during the winter. I had a quick question about the history of the town. I mean, as you said, Newbury was settled in 1635. Newburyport became Newburyport, a separate entity, in about 1764. But when we talk about old houses, how does the Great Fire of 1811 figure in? Now, to folks who don't know the history so well, there was an enormous fire in town in 1811, and it took, I don't know how much, perhaps a third of the downtown commercial area. Did we lose a lot of houses then, Jack? And if so, which part of town were they on?
We did, mostly around State Street, Water, Middle, Liberty Street, that whole area there, out to Fair. It was a sad story. A lot of houses. We lost our first custom house. The first custom house there in Newburyport was on State Street.
Mm-hmm.
About where the Bank of America office is in that building, and we lost that. We lost. There's a lot of interesting stories that come out of that fire, and it was the reason why everything got rebuilt in brick.
Yes, I understand that they went to the state officials down in Beacon Hill and they said, "We'll help you out, but you've got to rebuild in brick, not wood."
Rebuild in brick, to help prevent that fire. Yeah, we lost the custom house. We also lost Edward Blount, who was a bookseller, again in that same block on State Street. He's kind of an interesting story, and I know a lot about him because he is related to Abraham Wheelwright. He had that bookstore, and he sold it 6 months before the fire and moved to New York. So I always say, wow, that he was very lucky in terms of getting out of town beforehand. And if you ever go to Manhattan today, go to South Street Seaport, go to the South Street Seaport Visitor Center, and there's Edward Blount's printing office recreated.
Oh, wasn't that great?
Yeah, so that's the New York Newburyport connection.
Well, talking about comebacks, one of the great comebacks was the Maritime Museum itself, because it was built in about 1835, I believe, which is, just 2 decades after the Great Fire. Mm-hmm. But, in the 1960s and early 70s, it had really fallen into a great nadir. It was a junk heap in the back where that beautiful lawn is. As I understand it, it was, much disarray inside the building itself. You may not have been here, but what were the forces that enabled folks to, get back in there and make it such a terrific place? And as you said, the lawn has so many different facets to it now. How did that happen?
Oh man, you're hitting one of my dreams. I'll tell you, if there's one thing I want to do during my tenure as chair, which could be 1 or 2 or 3 years, we'll see how long it lasts, is to bring back some of the original founders and folks that were instrumental in making the custom house happen or keeping it alive, and having some sort of dinner or celebration.
Yes.
To thank them for it. Off the top of my head, I couldn't give you all the names. Peels, I think the fellow who had the model shipbuilding on Center Street. He was involved and instrumental, and Mullen and a lot of educators were involved and instrumental in making it happen. Their vision was kind of a mystic seaport for Newburyport. With this custom house as the anchor of that mystic seaport experience. It didn't quite go as far as what Mystic Seaport is today. That custom house building is a gem, and thank God they saved it. And now we have a collection in it. For the building alone, it's worth visiting. And I'll point out, Robert Mills was the architect. The same architect that did the U.S. Treasury building in Washington, D.C. and the Washington Monument. And there are 3 other custom houses that use the same design of ours. One's in New Bedford, the other one's in New London, Connecticut. And I was just in the New London Custom House about 2 months ago. And I swear to God, you walk in, you say, oh my gosh, I'm in Newburyport. It's the exact same building.
I've been there myself, and I did have the same moment. The displays were different, but I said, gee, the layout and the rooms are quite similar.
Yeah. So for people that are wondering what's a custom house and why was this so important a building, back in those days, the federal government, the only way they could raise money was to put duties on imported and exported goods. There was no important that a custom house was in the major ports to assess the value of goods that were getting shipped and collect a tax on them. So this custom house was integral not only to the federal government, but also to the local economy, for sure. And to your point about the history, yes, it became, after it was a custom house, it became, not many people know this, a shoe factory. And if you go into the second floor, the large room where we have our lectures, that was really 2 rooms. They split it into 1 room so that they could create a shoe production line at the time. After the shoe factory, it was a junkyard, and the person who owned it bought a submarine off the federal government, brought it upriver, parked it in front of the custom house, took all the parts out of it, and had it on the front lawn and inside the building while he sold it off or did whatever they did with the junk. Well,
that's a curious anecdote, I got to say.
Yeah.
You know what also helped, in my opinion, Jack, not directly connected to you, was the development of the boardwalk over recent years. It's part of the rail trail, but that has been such a wonderful asset. And then behind that is, along that is the memorial to fishermen here from the local area who have died since 2000. Exactly. And now the Harbor Masters headquarters have been built up too. So that whole area right in the back of the Maritime Museum is just developed so beautifully in recent years.
Yeah, and there's a major project now to actually develop the whole waterfront area. It's a lot of discussion at the city and approvals in terms of budgets and a 5-year, I think, plan to expand the waterfront park. But I will let you in on a secret. You should probably talk to Jeffrey Briggs, the sculptor who did our legendary Newburyport exhibit, because he's been very active at trying to establish something on the waterfront that is more dedicated to our history in the form of a small sculpture park. If you've ever been to Key West, Florida, in front of their custom house, there is a sculpture park of local Key West notables. I think in that case, about 20 of them. Jeff has been kind of floating this idea. He's been trying to get traction with it. It's been hard going, but to have 6 or 12 sculptures on the waterfront that recognize notables, these would be busts on granite pillars and spaced out, maybe in one area, maybe along one of the walkways. I think
that's a great idea. I've been, since I've been looking into local history the past decade or two, I am surprised that there's not more of a significant display, because Newburyport, as you know, was, the leading shipbuilder of the day. It was a leader in world trade. I mean, there's so many things that we were number one, or if not number one, certainly in the top circle in the colonies, which is not fully delineated on the boardwalk. So I am going to talk to Jeffrey. I have a call into him. Hopefully he can follow your capable footsteps on this program. and talk about it, and he can get it out. And because we're archived on YouTube, maybe, can get around a little bit and people can start talking. Because as you know, the history of the waterfront's incredible. And the more that we amplify it, I think, it'll be a great thing for the community.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not only a great thing for the community, but it's a great economic engine in terms of getting people up to Newburyport, walking around, spending their money in our shops. I would suggest, if for folks who are listening, if they go to Newburyport Historical Sculpture Garden.wordpress.com, I can just spell that out, Newburyport Historical Sculpture Garden.wordpress.com, and you get all the detail there about Jeffrey's vision. I really wish, I hope that his vision gets some play and people get excited about this.
Well, if you happen to see him, I mean, as I say, I do have a call into him. If you see him or talk to him, tell him that, he has a chair that we love to have him sit in and have him talk about his vision. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Jack, I mean, the work he's done on the sculptures and the history that was put together by many people, including Marge, and Skip, it's really remarkable, and I'm glad it's going to be there over the summer and through the fall. So if you're listening or watching, you want to get down to the Custom House Maritime Museum.
And for your listeners, if they don't know the background, Jeffrey, when I first tried to pitch this exhibit to the museum, I got a lot of "who's he" and "why would we just let one artist do this?" Jeffrey is responsible for the swan and the fountain and the mall and Frog Pond, and most importantly, he's responsible. He created the all the animals in the Rose Kennedy Greenway carousel. So,
I know, I heard that. Isn't that a remarkable credential? That's terrific.
Yeah, and there's a museum in Connecticut. They have a whole room dedicated to him. So yeah, he's a pretty significant person in our midst.
Well, I'm glad he's doing this, for your museum and for many of us. And when I get him on the show, I'd like to talk to him about that, and maybe, more people can learn about it, more people can get involved. Yeah. So how about the summer, Jack? We only have a minute or two left. What plans do you have for the rest of the summer? Will you be going to Maine again? Or are you going to be on the waterfront at the museum? What are you going to be doing for the rest of the summer?
Well, we got a lot going on. We're always busy at the museum. Besides the First Fridays and the musical events, we'll have the Rybacki Award, which is an annual Coast Guard award that we're giving during Yankee Homecoming at the museum. And if This House Could Talk takes a lot of time, I will tell you that if This House Could Talk has kind of caught on, I have a call later this week with a Dutch city that just outside of Amsterdam, Utrecht, wants to do the same thing. So
terrific.
I spent an hour with them explaining them how to do it.
An hour. See if you can get on a plane and go over there, Jack, on their dime, of course. But it sounds like it could be a fun place to visit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to that. But there have been quite a few cities, ex-Newburyporters, people that used to live here, who have moved to like Apalachicola, Florida, or live in or moved to Reading, Massachusetts, a little closer to home. They've done If This House Could Talk as well. So it's kind of caught on. It's a nice event.
Well, my excitement for the summer, and I'll just say it quickly, I finished my book on Plum Island. It's titled Plum Island, A Vulnerable Gem. It's printed in England, however, and I said, well, it's supposed to be here this week. I asked the publisher, where is it? He said, we shipped it, meaning they literally put 5,000 copies on a ship. And then he tells me, but the international shipping schedules are way behind because of, the unrest in Eastern Europe. But I'm thinking, really? Wow. What's wrong with a plane? I mean, I love shipping too. We're a shipping community, but couldn't you put it on a plane? I got to wait 2 weeks for the book. Anyway, I digress. I've been talking to Jack Santos. This is Life Along the Merrimack, 96.3 FM Joppa Radio, Channel 9 local TV, and we're archived on YouTube. Jack is the chair of the Custom House Museum. That's his hat right there. And Jack, thank you very much for being with us. I look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me.